Are you an HVAC professional looking to set your business apart? Then the Leading HVAC podcast is your go-to resource. I'm Kimon Hines, coach and trainer at SBE. And in this podcast, we'll share stories of success and struggle from leaders in the HVAC industry. You'll hear from experienced executives, managers, and innovators, providing you with the hard-earned insights from their journeys. These insights will equip you with the knowledge you need to navigate challenges and truly lead in the ever-evolving HVAC world. Welcome to the Leading HVAC podcast. I'm your host, Kimon Hines, coach and trainer here at SBE. I'm so excited to share with you an interview with Greg Matson. Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Kimon. Always nice being part of these programs.
Yeah, Greg, we had a conversation before I hit record, and I'm going to tell all of our viewers and our listeners that you definitely want to make sure you're taking notes on this, that you're leaning in on this one, because this is going to really empower you as a leader in your organization and the role that you're playing. So, Greg, for those who do not know Greg Matson, tell us where you are and what role you play in your company, and just kind of give us a little bio on who you are.
Well, I've been doing heating and cooling as an owner for a quarter of a century. And I think it took me 20 years before I started figuring out, the real important things to that process. And it's funny that leadership came up because it's one of the things I am most passionate about. It's, I think, the pivot pin to everything within an organization. If you want to grow, if you want to stay the magic of your organization and you're comfortable with where you're at, then growth probably isn't what you're looking for. But if you want to grow and have leveled leadership in your organization, it's a must. And I studied it for probably 16, 17 years from, the early 2000s. And it affected my personal life more than anything else. Just leading myself, I think, was the most critical beginning point. And then leading others at work. But that only got me so far for a long, long time. And so I kept reading books and I realized, to get to some of like Maxwell calls different levels of leadership, to move to leaders of leaders and leaders who train leaders of leaders. And there's, quite a few different levels to get to that point where our organization really was going to need it. And I saw that coming quickly, especially as we started following the SBE process, that I was not prepared for as an organization to have these people leading other people. Wow. And so as soon as we started having some success with SBE, I introduced a couple of our key people to some real basic leadership books, stuff like real easy personality books. Everyone's not the same, And just to give them an overall perspective and not go super deep. Right now, we're finishing up The Speed of Trust, Stephen Covey Jr. And absolutely phenomenal. And they really, really got into that. And, it's fun watching these guys progress and get through that and start developing their leadership skills and how they're working with other employees. Just in the past couple of months has been explosive.
Yeah. And I don't mean to cut you, but I do want us to, I want to peel this back a little bit. So you said 25 years in the HVAC
long
industry.
Time, right.
Right. And you've been studying leadership for 20 of those years. But tell us before that, just go back with us. Why did you even get involved in leading, owning HVAC business?
So I had done some heating and cooling work for a guy who actually, it's a really strange situation that put me there. And it doesn't have to happen to everyone for them to get into this realm. But I had a customer and a friend and eventually a mentor of mine that had written 7 New York Times bestseller books on leadership. And it was friends with John Maxwell and tons of people like that. And so I started mentoring with him on a regular basis. And he knew that he could help me. And he was a very, very strong leader. If you didn't jump over the bar, you weren't going to have another mentoring session until you did. So it's like, well, when are we getting back together? Well, As soon as you take care of that, give me a text and we'll make an appointment.
Mm.
And he was very rigid, very strong, held my feet to the fire all the time for years and years and years. And I just grew personally. I didn't grow to a point where I could help other people grow, but I did grow as far as being a father at home or, as a decent boss, as a single person running the company. I could at least have people that would buy into my vision, but not necessarily buy into it to the point where they were willing to lead other people. And that's a huge dynamic that's changing in our organization right now.
Yeah. So just your journey in the HVAC ownership world, did you start off as a technician before you owned the company? Just kind of tell us about that. Why did you even decide I
Yeah,
want to own a company?
well, I had owned a company before that in my early 20s, a publications company selling advertising. It was something where I had worked for another person and they didn't really have a very good level of integrity. I realized I could literally do his business better than he was. And so that's why I did it. Made a lot of mistakes because you usually do on your first business, and I did. And was building a house at the time and I needed a furnace. So that sort of started a conversation with heating and cooling, and I ended up doing it and I loved it.
Hmm.
I was like, that is so strange because all my high school aptitude tests said mechanical engineer or mechanical technician, and I didn't know what a mechanical technician even was. I'm like that, why do they keep saying this? And then all of a sudden I'm in the heating and cooling and I like it. I'm like, I cannot believe those stupid tests were right, but it was. So
Yeah.
so I stuck with it and just grew with it. And then because of my previous experience and mistakes I had made in another business, I was comfortable starting my own when they were done and continued on that business. And that
Awesome.
eventually grew into HVAC Comfort.
Yeah. So HVAC comfort, you, as it's clear to anyone watching this, listening this, leadership is a passion of yours.
It
It is
is
clear. Like it, we
wrong
can
passion.
we can keep this podcast rolling all day long, and
We
we will not
could,
exhaust your
and I,
info on in
and I would
leadership.
love every bit of it.
But I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, that there's some unique qualities that you need to be a leader in this industry. What would you say are some of those qualities, if you would agree with me that there's some unique qualities for leadership in this industry?
If you're if you're not at the very least what would be considered like a level one leader where you're just leading yourself. Other people aren't going to respect you. Other people aren't going to work for you. You're going to constantly have turnover at your organization. And you always wonder why. Like, I pay these people good, but they just keep leaving. I don't understand why. And it's because you're not setting a vision. You're not helping them grow at all. And you don't have any goals outside your own to do that. And so when you start leading yourself, the integrity and character pieces to that process are so integral that they force you to care about other people more than yourself. And then you end up, with people that have been with you for 24 years, like Chad has. And, very fortunate for that. But he saw me change. I mean, he saw me crazy when we were younger, and he just stuck with me for a while. I don't know why, but then saw some of the changes and liked the changes very slowly. Now he thinks it's unfair because we're changing so quick and other people get opportunities so quick that, oh my gosh, I said, that's okay. You're still at the top of the food chain. So, rising tide raises all ships. But leadership after that point, once you get to the point where you are able to lead other people and they see your vision and they buy into it, that's when integrity becomes a real big issue. Because if you're not showing up to meetings when you say you are, and you're not doing the things and you're not growing like you've presented in your vision, it's really hard without the integrity there. It's really hard to continue rolling that ball down the road. And then you get to a point where we're at, where the ball starts getting big, and you need other people to cast your vision along with you and make sure that things are getting led without you there. And it gets really challenging then, and a lot more fun, because that's when you start seeing growth of other people. And we couldn't do it without leadership. It's funny because the first time I met Jim, we went out to dinner the night I had flown into Phoenix, and I said, well, what time should we be at the office tomorrow? And
That's
he,
Jim Probst.
yeah, Jim
That's
Probst
Jim Probst from George
from
Brazil,
George
for those
Brazil.
who are
Yeah.
listening. Yeah.
And he said, well, you should come at 9. No, don't come at 9, come at 10. I have a meeting every morning at 9 and you probably wouldn't get anything out of it. I'm like, well, I'm here from Michigan. So if I got nothing out of it, I'll waste my time doing that. So I asked him if I could come. He said, sure. So I sat in his office on his everyday morning meeting. And what I witnessed was an extreme level of layered leadership. The people that reported to him weren't afraid of giving him bad news. They weren't getting accolades for good news. It was just reporting to somebody. It was just reporting facts. And, there was one person who had had a problem and his instant concern was for that person. How can we help them?
Mhm.
And so we were riding in the car over. He was going to show me Air Force later on that afternoon and his operations there. And he said, so did you get anything out? You probably didn't get anything out of the morning meeting. I'm like, oh yeah, I did. I'm like, you have extreme layered leadership. He goes, you noticed that? And I said, yeah, I did. I was really impressed by it. He goes, that did not come overnight. He goes, that's something we constantly work at. And so that kind of inspired me too to start working with my employees. And even though I didn't need it at the time, I knew that there would come a day. So we started reading books. We started talking about books. We start utilizing examples out of those books on how we can improve other people's lives and how we can maintain a growth pattern and all sorts of things. So,
Greg, that's a good point right here that I want us to just spend a little time on. For those who are watching this, someone saying, okay, Greg, I'm convinced I need to be a lifelong learner as the leader, as the manager, as the CEO of my company. I need to be a leader. But Greg, I cannot get my team members to get on board. They clock in, clock out. Maybe I try to give them books. Maybe I try to send them to trainings and they're not engaged. How do I get them to be invested in their own development as leaders themselves?
that's a tough one,
Mhm.
but not impossible. I was fortunate to have my couple key people as the hungriest people. They've been in those positions for a long time and they've gone through a lot of growth with me personally. And I mean business growth over the years. So they've seen that. And I basically sat them down and I drew out an org chart of where we would be when we hit the next couple stages and how many people are going to be in the organization. And basically, do you think I can run all these people? No way. Right. And so they saw that and I said, now I need people right here and here. Is that something you guys want to become? Because that's it. It's not me putting you in that position. We're not going to give you promotions based on management. That's the worst thing we can do is promote somebody that can't lead. You have to be able to learn to lead. And it's okay if you guys don't want that. But if you do, this is a big commitment on your part. And I'll keep you there. But it has to be a constant thing. So we actually have Thursday night book club. And every Thursday night, we go to dinner and we set the agenda for the next week. And so it's a good time to get with your key people once a week, regardless, just to reflect and then to
Yeah.
also kind of what did we learn from the books that week and how does that help with the organization and how can we utilize those methods moving forward and all sorts of
Yeah.
things. They have now become passionate at it. And that's the fun part. But it's
Yeah.
not easy. You have to really look in. Sometimes it's not the people that you want. I was just lucky to have the people that have been with me for a long time. They didn't want to end up anywhere else than where they were on that org chart.
Yeah. Greg, it's interesting that you mentioned that org chart. That was a vision that you put in front of them. This is where we're going. And
100%.
it's almost as if when we get here, this is what we need. And you're not just going to be in that position just because you've been here. You have to
Right.
grow as a leader. And so you set a vision for the company, for that particular role, and then you gave them a path to get there.
Correct. 100%. I completely equipped them in the process to be able to make it.
Yeah.
And that's a key thing too.
Yeah.
Equipping is, saying you need to be there, but then not following up with a process to get them there that's destructive. That is not a good thing. But in
Yeah.
my
Yeah. Greg, talk about the importance of coaching and training for your development as a leader and for the development of the leaders that work with you.
I think that becomes a very basic concept. I don't think an organization can grow past a leader's capabilities. And so if you're not learning, if you don't have a passion for it, I'd strongly suggest getting one. It will hold you back. It'll hold the organization back, and it'll hold the people that you want to see succeed back. And I see that more often than not, that you'll have somebody in leadership in their organization. Well, I just want to do things my way. And so many times that just it's either stagnant or it's falling back. And I have a lot of friends that have done it that way. It's not encouraging.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's just your organization's limited to the leader's ability to lead. And so therefore, if I want my organization to grow, I have to constantly grow as a person. And that's just my belief. That's what it comes down to. I've read it in too many
Yeah.
books, and I believe they're right.
But Greg, let me give you some pushback that I know
Yeah.
someone watching this might be listening. Greg, I do not have the time. You're probably a much bigger organization than I have, and you have better employees, and I have to run calls and I have to answer stuff. And if I don't have myself doing 10 different things at the same time, nothing will get done. So I don't have time for coaching. I don't have time for reading. I don't have time for training and personal development. I just have to, and maybe one day. So what would you say to that person?
One day is not a day of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. One day's not in there. You'll never go past the struggle that you're currently involved in until you choose to change it. Pain of staying the same is worse. Change will occur when the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of change.
Mhm.
So that's a very true statement. And yeah, I hear that a lot. I'm sure you do too as a coach. It's self-defeating to the nth degree. But yeah, you have to find time. You have to just do it. Are you exhausted? Yes. Are some of your work weeks 80-hour work weeks? Sure. That you bought into that. You don't like it, become a W-2 earner and don't be a leader in that organization and get paid as a service tech. I know a lot of companies that pay well. I mean, it's like it is what it is. You have to
Yeah.
push yourself. It's constant
Yeah.
pushing.
And it sounds like the pain that you feel, you're always going to feel it until you take the step of developing yourself as a leader, because you just might be the lid that's causing the pain that you are experiencing and others are experiencing.
That's funny that you say the lid. So yeah, you're going to be a fly in that jar unless you decide to remove it.
Yeah.
And and yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, it's not just you. It's not just you in the organization that's held back. It's the entire organization. It's everyone that works for you. They don't see hope. They don't have hope. They look for a different job because they don't see a future there. They don't see a career. They only see a job. And until they have a place that they see that's growing and there's opportunity, and so and so's been here 3 years and look what he's doing, and until you get into a situation where you're willing to accept that change has to occur. And as far as the pain goes, the pain really never goes away. You should learn to use it as a motivator. It just changes. There's always new obstacles and new things that are uncomfortable. And you just need to learn to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, I think,
Yeah.
what I do.
Nice. So, Greg, one of the things we like doing on this podcast is letting people know that there are challenges and there are ways to overcome it. And so, can you share with us a challenge you had at HVAC Comfort as a leader and how you were able to overcome it?
We constantly have changes and challenges. I've noticed that, we've had techs that didn't want to debrief because they know the bar is going to be held high for them. And that is uncomfortable for the person debriefing. In this case, this specific person, it was me. But here's how this changed over the last couple of weeks with this person. I had a talk with them and I asked him, let's revisit your goals. how they coincide with your position and the goals of the company. And is that still important to you? Because if it is to me too, and we want to get you to move forward. So step one. I notice you haven't been calling me after all of your calls. Yeah, well, I said, I know that sometimes the information I give in a loving way is hard to accept, or you don't want to hear it. But I promise you that if we just go through this process for a couple of weeks, you'll get better. Within last week, he was finishing my sentences, seeing where he was missing the opportunities with customers, seeing how he could have spent more time in the pain funnel. To the end of the last week, where he's like, yeah, I'm not sure if we need a debrief. I'm like, really? Are we going back there? Oh, no, I already know what I did wrong. He's like, as soon as I walked out of the house, I realized this, this, and this, and that. And I'm like, that is amazing
Yeah.
because holding the bar for him, even though it was tough from my position with regards to that, or if Chad does it for somebody else, it's the emotional reward to seeing your employee or somebody that you care about succeed because you held the bar and you didn't make it easy on them. You just made it worth it. And that's probably the most recent example. It's not a huge example, but it's
Yeah.
always a challenge. And there's
Yeah.
a mental issue there with debriefing.
Greg, I love that last line. You didn't make it easy, but you made it worth it. And I think for someone navigating a similar challenge of accountability, you don't have to make it easy, but you have to make it worth it. And I love that. That's a good takeaway. Write her down for those of you like taking notes. Somebody needs to tweet or put that on social media. That was really good. So, Greg, we like ending the podcast with what I call rapid fire questions.
I'll do my best.
All right, here's the first one. What's the best business book that you've read?
Best business book. I wouldn't say actual business. I would say the one we're in right now, and it's not just because it's right now. My wife really, she referred this book to me for like 6 years. You have to read this book. You have to read this book. You have to read this book. And The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. I saw more change of our employees in that book in just a
Wow.
short period of time than I have any other book. They were grasping concepts, they were utilizing concepts. We're trying to get through an acquisition right now, and just the idea of needing to build trust quickly with new people, it was a perfect fit for what we're going through. People often think that business is the, like, what do you do on your P&L and what are your KPIs? And I think when you say business book, your people are your real assets. And if you can learn how to develop them, that's going to get you a lot farther than anything else. The rest of it can be learned pretty quickly.
I love it. I love it. So, The Speed of Trust, that's definitely one I'm going to
Yeah.
add to my list because I just love the
Huge,
title.
amazing book.
I
Absolutely
love the
amazing.
title. All right, what's one thing you want to become better at as a leader in the next year?
Well, there's always spots I see with my personal growth. I would like to get my newbie leaders who are definitely qualified as leaders at this point, and they are leading, to get to the point where they're starting to help and encourage other people to do the same. We need leveled leadership. I mean, if we're going to get to that much larger revenue size company, that's the next step. And that will be the goal for the organization. My own personal goals is to just the hardest thing I think to do is to take yourself out of the equation and focus on everyone else, and that is something that never stops. And so I'm always constantly working on that.
Yeah,
So
good. Now, Greg, one of the things that we know is important is having times to de-stress when you feel like quitting. So what are some of the top ways that you enjoy life and de-stress when things get difficult?
people often ask me, well, how do you do anything else other than work? You seem like a workaholic. And what they don't know about me is I do work hard, but I also play hard. And in the summertime, we have a wake surf boat, and we go out there a lot with our neighbors and
Nice.
spend a few hours every Saturday and Sunday doing it, and some evenings. Sometimes it's just watching the sunset over my lake, and de-stressing. But yes, you have to detach. You have to compartmentalize your work away from your personal life and just slow down. Just try to make life go as slow as humanly possible. in that moment, and the rest of it will be fine.
Yeah, that's a key. Anyone watching this, listening to this, that is a key. You're not a machine. You do need times to de-stress. So
Have to. You
yeah.
have to.
All right, Greg, this is the last one. If you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you would give to yourself when you first became a leader?
Learn quicker.
Mm.
I would learn quicker. No doubt about it. I thought I was learning from me when I started, and I wasn't learning for me. I was learning for others. And if I could go back, I would be focused on that much more than how am I going to improve from this? How can this make me money? Because that's not the goal. The money comes automatically with it.
Learn quicker. Listen, those of you who are watching this, if you have not subscribed to this podcast, you know you need to, because we talk with leaders like Greg who help us to level up. You inspire us, Greg, with your own thirst for knowledge, your desire to be a lifelong learner. And someone here today, you've gotten some books, you got some resources, you got some nuggets. I want to just encourage you to put those into practice in your own leadership. And as Greg says, let's learn quicker. Thanks,
Love
Greg,
it.
so much.
Thank you. Come on.
Thank you for listening to the Leading HVAC podcast. If you would like to learn more about SBE, you can find us online at sbeodyssey.com. That's sbeodyssey.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would appreciate it if you would leave us a review on this podcasting platform. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.